finding the balance between how you are online. It's not that much different from having to navigate socially the reality of just existing in the world, and working in Hollywood as a metaphorical place, even if it's not my physical place, something I'm keenly aware of, because we tend to have people who are really pushing the envelope on, both in terms of the social justice side, and you have people on the free speech side, who are often at opposites, right? And are the people who are actually fighting, sometimes through different proxies, trying to be as straightforward as I can be, and feel like I'm being true to myself, but keeping my visa intact.
Welcome to the Virtual Expats podcast, where we discuss how moving to different countries affects what we do online, with your host, Stephanie, a first-generation Italian-American who feels more comfortable not fitting in Asia, where she has been living more on and off since 2003 than in her own country, the US. My name is Ronald Paredes, host of the Creativity Roots podcast and a long-time listener of Virtual Expats, where I was pleased to be a guest in the episode 62. I'm hijacking this intro so I can tell you a little bit about the guest for this episode of Virtual Expats. Brendan Davis is an American expat living in China for many years. He is a film and TV writer, producer, director, and fellow podcaster. His podcast, If I Knew You Better, Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom, and How China Works are among his several projects. Each of them very different, but with a common denominator. They take you to the inside of the cultural aspects and interesting nuances that we often miss or overlook, with witty and funny conversations. At a personal level, Brendan is a great guy, considerate, respectful of other people's work, and a very dedicated professional. He always talks with a very positive vibe that makes you feel like everything is gonna be alright. It is funny because when he sent me voice messages, my wife always asks me, who is the guy with the handsome voice? In this episode, Steph and Brendan chat about how his move to China changed what he did online, how he's splitting his time now that he has decided not to work in China, but will continue to keep a home base and internet connection here, and how he cultivated his crazy in a good way online persona, while being a deep and thought-provoking and, may I say, wonderful human being. You can find out more about Brendan by going to his website, crazyinagoodway.com, and you will want to check his projects because there is a lot to learn and enjoy from them. If you have any comments or questions about this episode, please feel free to connect with Steph on any social media platform. You will find the information in the episode notes. I hope you enjoy this episode of Virtual Expats.
Thank you so much, Brendan, for joining us on Virtual Expats Podcast.
Steph, thanks a lot for having me. This is going to be, it's going to be a podcast.
I think it's going to be a wild
I think it's going to be a fun podcast, hopefully.
Absolutely, absolutely. We play with the geographical movements of expats and their virtual activities and see how they affect each other. So let's start with your geographical movements. I hate the question, where are you from? And I'm trying to think of a different question to create. So what is your geographical story?
But here's the same question with a lot more words.
No, it's not, because I don't just want to know the starting point. I want like a snapshot of where you've been. So where have you lived?
Sure.
Where have you lived in the world? You grew up in the U.S., right? In the Deep South?
I did. The deep South, the deep, dirty South is my origin story. That's the incubator. It's a long story, which we'll talk about, I think, in pieces as I understand the show. But basically, I moved to Los Angeles in 2002. And then that was if Atlanta was kind of the, incubator origin, then LA was definitely the crucible in terms of, because it was a big career change was involved, same business, but going from technical to creative. And then along the way, which is itself a long story, but I had, among other things, this lifelong interest in other cultures and have friends and partners in New Zealand, and also have friends and partners that I developed in China as it came to be. So I found myself doing more and more work with China in the US, and also developing some projects that were cooperative projects with New Zealand in the US, or New Zealand and China. And so I found myself starting to go to those places in 2013. And so I started becoming co-located between LA and Beijing, where I'd spend about a month every season or so, every 4 to 6 months, and spend about a month worth of time in China. I did that for a few years, and then I moved there full time in 2016. and back and forth. I've been based back in California within the States since late December. But I mean, Beijing is still home. Beijing is where, most of my stuff is
right.
that I care about right now. Yeah. So Beijing's where I'm paying rent. And I'm in that's kind of the short version of that.
So it looks like the U.S. and China are the two countries, if we were just to put it into countries and not cities. Is that right?
Well, that's the main places. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Italy. I had a business partner there. It's been a good bit of time in New Zealand, but Beijing and LA are the two homes. For
Italy and New Zealand, were those like long work trips kind of things, or did
you? And I wasn't on a lease or anything.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm staying. I wasn't staying in a hotel for the most part. It was like staying
Gotcha.
at long-term rentals. But
now that you're mentioning the whole lease apartment thing, like where your home is thing, I think I do that too. I'm like, if I was there for a month to 3 months, but I was in a hostel or a hotel or a friend's place, I don't really consider that having lived there.
Yeah, no, I don't consider it. I mean, to be. Because I still have ongoing things in New Zealand, although there's super active. I mean, a part of my soul, Steph, a part of me lives there. Yeah. Which sounds really super corny, but it's true. So really Los Angeles and Beijing have been the two main homes. And Atlanta really goes way back, and it's a long story, but don't feel super connected to there. No disrespect or anything. Just a long time ago.
Just not to get too tangential, but we are talking about place in one of the things in there here. But I always do a Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Shanghai, Beijing comparison in my head. And I haven't spent enough time in Beijing to own this theory. But do you've spent a fair amount of time in Beijing. Have you spent a lot of time in Shanghai?
Yeah, a decent bit. Yeah.
Do you think that's a fair comparison?
Pretty fair. In terms of geography and in terms of distance between them, and the fact that they're two significant cities that have within the same country, obviously, but that has some really different characteristics and some overlap. Yeah, really different. LA is very serious in a lot of ways. Although it's obviously it's a serious base of the entertainment business, and I don't know. I always relate LA more to Beijing, and I have my my grid. So like people who know LA but are new to Beijing and they're trying to get their head around travel, I have like a LA reference map that like I roughly lands on top of Beijing, so I can use. Okay, so imagine you're in Glendale. Okay, well that's actually where the airport is, and then so I have this way to translate it for people. But if you know LA, I can make Beijing make sense in about 5 minutes.
Wow.
In terms of here's where that is, not in terms of understanding.
Okay. Of like maneuvering around the city.
Yeah, not in terms of deep geopolitical insights.
That's a whole podcast in and of itself.
That's right.
All right, so let's get online then. So when was the first time?
Let's start the interview. Oh, yeah.
No, it's about place and internet. And we started a while ago, actually.
I know. You owe me an edit, but we'll see when this airs.
No worries. So what was the first time you really feel like you were like the internet was a huge part of your daily life?
I think huge part of my daily life would be, it's going to be earlier than almost anybody you've talked to, unless you've talked to people who helped invent stuff. Let me answer your question by adding in a little extra context. The short answer to your question, the punchline to that question, I would say is, 1993, maybe.
Wow.
And so this is I think this is basically pre-web. So I fell in with a friend of mine back when I was in ninth grade. His dad bought him the very first computer kit that was sold, the very, very first. And most people never touched a computer. No one really had computers at home. He was a very successful doctor and could afford this beautiful, wonderful scientific gift for his kid, who's a smart kid, but I was more electronically inclined. I was always doing stereos and things. Anyway, this kid, Brian, got me involved to help him. So we built this computer and we actually learned basic programming. 83, 82, 83.
1983.
Yeah. So I was using computer. I was literally built computers, although, from a kid. there are people who are like low level hacker types now that would just laugh at me completely. I mean, like I have no skills in that regard now, but I went from being like, you're a wizard to like, I'm a savvy user, but I'm not. So I really started computers on a regular basis in the early 80s. By the time the early days, long before the web, and it was Usenet groups and IRC chats, and I was doing all that stuff when I was all coming up in the early 90s. I go all the way back. Yep.
You definitely win so far. You are the earliest user.
Well, if you get Tim Berners-Lee on here or Al Gore, they'll. There's a lot of people ahead of me.
I don't think those are going to happen.
They're not next week.
I don't know. Anyway,
it's their loss. It's their loss, Steph. Tell yourself that it's their loss.
There you go.
That's what I tell myself.
But what were you doing? You were mostly in the chat rooms, and you were like, was this like you were? Did you say 10 or 12 years old? What were you?
I didn't say that.
You didn't say, okay, we're not putting.
You're giving me credit for being a lot younger than I am, actually.
Okay.
So I mean, some people. I'm 51.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, I'm very close.
I know you're shocked. Yeah. I'm always told how I look. You look so much. You don't look a day over 50. I know.
Yeah. It's the creative gene. It makes
I've looked the last 3 years living in China. I've caught up. I always looked a lot younger than my age. And I'm probably about caught up now. I feel like I'm basically like there's no, how do you think I am? And then I guess, and they're really close. I'm like, okay.
My idea of what 50 and 60 looks like has changed dramatically as I've gotten older. Yeah.
It happens. Once you cross about 30, it's like, oh, that's going to happen to me. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the way when I was 18, like when I was teaching 18-year-olds and they were looking at me, I was like, I thought that age that I was when I was teaching, I thought that was ancient when I was 18. So I can only fathom what you guys are like.
Wow. I was, exploring, researching because I'd used computers, there was people wouldn't remember this unless you're my age or older, but at your library, if you had a really nice library, and I worked my way through college, so it took forever, which is part of why. In the early to mid 90s, I eventually graduated in 93. Gone straight through, I would have graduated in 90. So that's all. There were the online card catalog was a thing at the college, and then you could access research papers through this super hinky, which is an old experience, super funky, weird little version of what became it was the internet. It was it was the civilian part that was for academia. So you could find papers and things, but
so cool.
So I was using that stuff and pulling quotations.
What color was the screen at that point? Was it green or orange?
Oh, good question. That depended on your monitor, actually.
Oh, no, for you.
That was a monitor thing.
Yeah.
I had all the flavors. Yeah.
All the flavors.
I had the tangerine and the lime. Yes.
There you go.
I had the Matrix and the Surface of the Sun, whatever that orange one was.
So you started with chat rooms. When do you remember doing things other than chat rooms online?
So chat rooms gave way to it was the early, like the first really super wobbly version of Netscape and Internet Explorer were kind of simultaneous, and AOL was a thing.
Yep.
And they had their own web browser, which for most people had no, understandably, I'm not trying to sound superior about it. No. Most people who came to the internet with AOL back in the day, that was their full concept of what it was. They had no idea that, this is a walled garden that's curated and stocked and planted just for you. Oh, there's all these fish in the stream. Yeah, how about that? We put them there. And that stream is closed on both ends, right? They had no idea that this was like a self-contained ecosystem. Yeah. And there are later versions of AOL where they had like their browser, and you're like, I could put in any address if I know what to do, and I could search, and oh my gosh, Alta Vista changed my life. Early search engines. It's funny because people grow up now with the internet. It's part of your consciousness of how to use it. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people, especially people with kids who grow up. And, oh my God, they're wired into the world's information from birth. And so what are their expectations, right? But so at the time, it's like, oh my God, I could find out anything. Like, and it's funny because as much junk and misinformation as there is currently online on any given topic, and there's gold and there's junk, and you have to know enough to avoid the junk. Yeah. But so back when there were, I can't put a real number on this, but however many trillions of web pages there probably are. I guess there are now. However many there are.
Yeah.
I was online when there were like probably less than 100,000 web pages total in the world, because when it started, like every creative person who was also computer savvy somewhere started trying to build some funky, weird site. So you have a bunch of really goofy, the archives of some of that stuff's hilarious to see what
my gosh.
It's
a lot of that stuff still online.
Creativity. Some of it is, and some people have maintained.
That's so cool.
Although the old technology doesn't work, so they can recreate how it looked. But
it's funny because what was it like last month or 2 months ago where it was the anniversary of basically the common people's version of the internet, not the military version, but like the World Wide Web. And I was like 30 years. Can you just fathoming that all of this has happened in that short time frame? Is crazy.
I fathom it because I watched, because I was there.
Me too.
Although
on a slower path than you, I was in a pretty small, well, actually, no, my first real venture was, at university. I really just said, at university in like 1999, just before the millennium changed. And it was Hotmail. And then we discovered, you could type in other addresses and find other things and then just search. But we had the orange screen in our school.
Right.
The orange screen with the listservs. And I don't view that as in the same way as the World Wide Web when it became very search friendly. It feels like a very different place because the listservs were very university based and they were very boring for the most part. So it was a very different experience. You moved to China in 2016, gone over chat rooms and research online. What other things were you doing during that gigantic chunk of time?
Chat rooms and IRC. I was still like, no one needs to know my history, but I was still in Athens, Georgia. I lived there 8 years before I moved to Atlanta. Okay. It was years and years and years and years. And so the development of the web was, the early social networks and things like that, and listservs, as you mentioned, and like job boards. And there were early user groups, like professional film groups, because I was I was a technician, came out of music, at my first careers in music as a guitar player and also in sound engineer, to film school, got a film degree at Georgia State in Atlanta, and worked on the technical side. I worked in production sound as a mixer or a boom operator, and I also became an editor later. And so this was like about 12-year period in Atlanta. And so it was social stuff, but also work groups and things like that, and moving to LA. Before I moved to LA, the online dating sort of became an early thing. And so I was single in Atlanta and single and moved throughout the time in LA, and for the most part. And so the early dating websites, which were hilarious, but just such a revelatory thing, and there used to be such a stigma around it.
Yeah.
And now it's common.
Why were they hilarious? Because
because no one knew how to act in the reference. I think the funny thing was there were all these, what do they call them? Again, you have to be old enough to get the reference, or the name would instantly make you laugh if I could pull the name out of thin air. But there were these matchmaking services that they try to sell. And it was basically, there'd always be this is going to sound, anybody who's easily triggered, just get over it. Okay. I'm a grown man. So there was this is coming from a good place, but there was these dating matchmaking sites run in real time, like in real world, like these little kiosks at the shopping at the strip mall, and you go in, and they were always run by some kind of like good looking kind of woman, probably middle-aged woman, and she's the face of like her local store, and she's got a charming staff of other like attractive women, and their market is, and their ads that they would run were these photos of all these good looking women, and they're single and they're on video, and here's what I like, man, and blah blah blah. And the 80s video production values were so hysterically bad. We had better equipment. It's just like the low level of equipment gave you this terrible look. But in reality, their customers were basically all the needy men. And I never did that. It was thousands of dollars. I was curious enough to find out. It cost thousands of dollars to go in there, and they would do this interview. Let's do a personality inventory. What do you like in a woman? And then they would they would tell you how to dress up like you're getting your photo made at the Sears Portrait Studio. And so there are all these great videos online of guys that, at their nerdiest ever, very awkwardly trying to tell themselves on this horrible video. So that was around. So then when online dating websites became a thing, but before it was a commercial venture, it was just there was always like those chat groups and things like that where people could meet and mix and mingle virtually or in real life. And so that was an interesting thing. And then all these subcultures, so there was like professional film groups that popped up and I got to be part of. There were all kinds of things related to music and arts and lifestyle. And there was an old group, I'll out myself here, called Suicide Girls, which was not like my dominant aesthetic that I was into. I actually have no tattoos. I had a bunch of piercings and super long hair when I was a rock guy, but amazingly, I have no tattoos.
Yeah.
But Suicide Girls is all about, like, basically, people know it now, it's old hat, but at the time it was a big deal. It's like, oh, we're killing society's idea of what we should look like. Basically it was a lot of daddy help me or uncle touch me kind of projected onto the internet. I see your face. You don't know what to do with it. This is kind of comedy. It's comedy. You're like, what are we talking about?
No, because I'll tell you what, sorry, my facial expressions just have a life of their own. I've tried to tame them over the years. It doesn't work that great.
That was an out for me because I realized I was digging a hole.
No. My facial expression was because you're putting already just a few minutes into the interview, you're putting a lot of words to things that I've experienced or thought, but haven't actually expressed articulately yet. So you're doing that, which is awesome.
Great.
But I hadn't realized that I had thought it, and that's what the facial expression was.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
I like how meta this is, other than that one edit in the beginning where we did I got a second take on that. Sound like an idiot.
Funny that you mentioned the TV stuff, though, because when I was in LA, I was a very broke college student living in Santa Monica. I don't know. Rent control is the reason why that happened. And community colleges, thank goodness for that. But I had the AOL disc. I did, yeah. Unbeknownst to me, the school with the biggest international student population was SMC, and I just thought LA was so diverse and so mixed.
And it is, but SMC is like the crockpot and all that.
Absolutely, LA is much more.
Good metaphor in a lot of ways.
What's that?
It's a crockpot's probably a metaphor. Good metaphor in a lot of ways. I lived in Santa Monica my first 6 years in LA, and I love it. But
really,
yeah.
It's got a soft spot in my heart. I mean, I lived less than 2 miles from the beach, and I mean, coming from landlocked Pennsylvania, it was awesome. Where was I going? Oh, so I was super broke living in Los Angeles and going to school, and so I got the AOL discs because I couldn't afford a dial-up internet, no matter how cheap it was. And so I went into the chat rooms, and I discovered, there are dating chat rooms. I'm single in Los Angeles. This place is huge. Let's meet some people that aren't in my classes. And so it's all just what's that?
And have a free dinner.
Oh yeah, but the stakes, people were crazy. I mean, they're crazy online now, but they were really crazy then because there weren't as many pictures. It was mostly text.
Oh yeah.
As soon as people got you into a private room, they got like super crazy kinky in 2 seconds, and I'm like, wait, we were talking about books. What just happened?
Yeah, what happened here? Went from naked lunch to losing my lunch.
Yeah, it was a bit, but yeah. So it was interesting to see how people changed when it was in the general chat room when a lot of people were talking to when we went into a private chat room. But anyway, that was
no, that's so good. Well, I mean, you asked where things go, so. I mean, so just different social sites, and I was never a big Friendster guy, but I remember when it started, I still have friends who are like, bring back Friendster. Well, I have one friend. Hi, Moksha. I have one friend who still says, bring back Friendster. It says that on her Facebook profile. It said that on her MySpace profile.
Yeah.
I knew back then
now,
too.
you were a musician. Did you put stuff up on MySpace?
That was a decade before.
Okay.
I had a brief professional, semi-professional career.
Yeah.
But it was over by 97.
Okay.
Yeah, 97. I mean, maybe kind of gasped a little bit in 98. But yeah, so I mean, a long time before MySpace. And MySpace, later became branded. They tried to, there was the heyday, and then they died when Facebook rose to prominence, and then MySpace tried a bit of a rebrand. They paid Justin Timberlake a bunch of money, and he was like, hey, it's a hit place for music. And, all our old profiles disappeared, and it was like G, it was like a less cool G+, which that's possible.
So you were a pretty heavy user of the internet from the beginning. Do you feel like your online and offline life were pretty balanced, or did you ever feel like you kind of spent too much time online?
It was nice enough in your prep, to see some of the questions you might address, and a lot of them are thought provoking. This was one of them. My short answer to that question is yes. There were definitely periods where I was online way too much. There are a bunch of these kind of dystopian future sci-fi near future sci-fi movies, which is to say, near term sci-fi movies, some version of losing your identity online or being addicted to Strange Days, things like that. And there were times where I felt like I could relate to that, but I was never like Neo in the Matrix, where I'm like, living there, jacked in, wired in. But I mean, but there were times. I mean, there were probably periods here and there. There would be periods of a few days where I was basically just online constantly. I mean, again, 20 odd years ago.
It's hard not to. Sometimes when life is harsh, it's nice to have a slightly more controlled digital environment to kind of escape to. These stories you were talking about in Athens and Atlanta and Los Angeles.
Well, you were asking if there's a period of time I spent too much time online, and you're asking about balance. Yeah, I mean, it's something I'm really in touch with it these days. The pendulum has swung between the extremes. It's really gone. I made a lot of changes some years ago just for my own, having some kind of a shred of mental health awareness, and spending too much time online, and mostly being too many inputs. Like it's, I have the kind of brain that's pretty hyperactive. So I don't have, ADHD or anything like that. But I mean, you could make a case for slightly more obsessive than normal. Things that are useful in my career as a producer, because you want to be to track a bunch of things and prioritize, priorities, things like that. Anyway, though, as relates to the question, there are times in my work life where tracking a ton of inputs and value ordering that and kind of constantly being aware of a bunch of stuff, but focused on the task. That's the job, basically, right? And then acting on that information the right way.
What do you mean by input?
Well, I mean, all kinds of different variables, I mean, that you're producing a project, and there's crew, there's cast, there's crew, there are all these things. Oh, we have a location, and how do we get that insurance certificate? And there are tons and tons of things going on. Even though I hire somebody whose job is to handle those details, I have to make sure that those details are managed, right? And make sure that the right person is doing the right thing, and there's things I've got to do, whatever. So the way I'm wired is an asset for what I do, but it means that it's hard to turn, it's easy for me to do something like obsess on the internet that like I used to. It's been a long time though. Yeah. But it's hard to turn my brain off at night. So to be able to do this, I adopted a lot of practices, and there's a lot more to it. The why has to do with other things, but I adopted a no screen. I try to do no screens about an hour or so before bed at a minimum. Don't always do it. I like everybody else. And sometimes I'm in the bed with the phone in my hand, but I don't look first thing in the morning. I basically really had to take control of all that stuff to be able to for my own sake. And again, it gets into other issues. I mean, from simple productivity to peace of mind to statements of identity to the universe about how I'm going to live my life. I'm not available 24 hours a day. Middle of a production, there's certain things, if I'm in the middle of something where I might have to be reached at 3 a.m. Again, I'm fortunate to be at a point where I'm structured this way, but there's certain things, there are people whose job it is to do what they call fire watch, right? In the military camping, where you're the one up all night looking for enemy fire, or looking for making sure the fire's out if it's a campground, looking for movement from the other side, whatever. Right. But there are a handful of things that would be the reason that like I would be woken up or bothered in the middle of the night, but those are few and far between. Yeah. So I mean, if I'm doing my job right, then one thing I can do is I can get some sleep. So it's really hard for me to naturally turn off the inner chatter. So I adopted, I got really serious about meditation practice, and I'm not as on my game with my yoga as I need to be. I've got to get back into being in shape is a priority, but yoga, meditation, especially meditation, I don't mess with. I mean, every morning and usually every night, but I don't look at anything when I get up. I mean, I blindly turn the alarm off, but I'm about an hour before I look at the phone.
I'm so impressed.
Practice. Got to do it. And I get up early. I didn't invent more hours in the day. I get up earlier to be able to do that. Yeah.
See, I've done the screen thing at night, and I've definitely stopped doing late night interviews because with time zones, it was easier for me to just do an interview at 10 p.m. at night. But I found that I couldn't turn off. My brain just kept going. And I was at 2, 3 a.m. and I was still going. So I started to do stopped doing late night interviews, I stopped my screen time at 6 or 7 p.m. most of the time. but I can't do mornings. Mornings, I definitely, because of time zones and I'm talking to people all around the world, I do grab my phone at the beginning of the day and check if there's anything I've like missed, forgotten, or any kind of fires. So my own personal fires. Yeah, the screen time at night made a huge difference for me. Do you find that you sleep better because of that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't rely on any one sleep aid. I mean, sometimes nothing at all. Sometimes melatonin, sometimes Benadryl, diphenhydramine, the different things to sort. I mean, I tried every prescription thing under the sun.
Have you tried CBD oil? Because that's still pretty accessible in the US, right?
CBD oil?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm using it regularly while I'm here in the States, and sadly, I'll be leaving it behind when I get on the plane. I sound like it. I'm not on the influence of anything at the moment, but I'm a big advocate of the leafy green medicine in general.
Yeah. No, we bought some. I heard, was it Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss or something? I heard a lot of people talking about it for a while, and I do have problems falling asleep at night. And so I bought it when we were on a vacation, like a long vacation in Japan. Because it's legal there. And so I bought it, had it delivered to our hotel, and tried it out for a week. And I was like, okay. Yeah. Why is this illegal where I live right now? This is not fair.
It's very sad. And I guess we could, I mean, I have been in 2 pretty major car accidents, neither one of which my fault, but I have a bunch of issues. Plus, been a big guy on and off, and I've done the boom operator thing's a very physical job. And, and sitting and editing is actually terrible for your back. And so I've had all these things that are just, basically my back and legs. And I'm just going to old man for a second, but basically that's one thing that makes a massively positive difference. Like, guys, it's derived from rope. Okay. Just derived from, you can derive it from the plants that don't have any fun time at all. The plants that you make rope from.
They talk about internet addiction, but honestly, I've just realized by you saying this, and I talk about this a lot, but I don't actually address it specifically, the physicalness of being on a screen that long.
Sure. Totally.
I really don't explicitly address that, but I have my own issues too from things off screen that affect my on-screen time, from on-screen stuff, eye stuff, different wrist stuff. Yeah.
Well, I'm wearing these reading glasses. I'm wearing these glasses now, and I had fighter pilot eyeballs up until about 2-3 years ago. All of a sudden I need these for reading.
Yeah, I had LASIK surgery before I started and stopped a PhD program. And that's when I started using reading glasses again, because it was too much time online, reading videos, creating stuff. Just, it was nuts. It was nuts. Yeah. Never do a PhD program. No, I didn't say that. Yeah.
I think it's too late for me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a weird existence.
Hello everyone, I'm Eva Yu. I was a tech journalist in Israel, Silicon Valley, South Korea, and China for 5 years. And last year, I left my job and I started a cycling journey from Shanghai to London, interviewing the tech entrepreneurs on the ancient Silk Road. And I was on the episode 71 at Virtual Expats. And it says South Korean journalist who has lived in Ecuador, US, UK, and China. And so currently I'm writing a book about the cycling trip, and I plan to donate the proceeds from the book to Turkey. So if you want to get in touch with me, my email is evayoor@gmail.com. So it's EVAYOOARE@gmail.com. And my YouTube channel is Seek Road, which is SEEKROAD. And my website is seekroad.co. So it's not .com, it's .co. And let's get back to Brendan's Virtual Expat story. Thank you.
Where are we? Oh, we're still in the US. Can we jump over to China, or is there anything else in the US?
Sure, of course. No, yeah. So
you moved to China in 2016. Yeah. What would you say is the biggest...
back and forth. I mean, I first went there 2013.
2013.
So
okay.
First exposure.
So first time you moved.
I mean, like a month at a time, and I wasn't like out for a day. It was like
fair enough. But
living like a local. I was.
So what was the biggest shift in what you did online when you first went there in 2013?
Sure. So there's the obvious to anyone who knows China, with reality that the things you take for granted, the rest of the world are blocked. No Google anything. Gmail still worked at the time, okay, but even now Gmail is kind of a disaster. So Gmail, Google Drive, Google, whatever, not going to happen. Obviously, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and
did you have a VPN back then?
Immediately. I did. And I'd been using them before because of travel and security, sometimes for work and be wary of open hotspots for travel. So I was already using VPNs before moving. Yeah. So that was, that's the obvious difference. And then of course, I mean, the thing I miss more than anything is just Google search. Jumping way ahead, there's the controversy. Look, I appreciate their principles. I'm in Palo Alto right now.
Right.
I'm down the road, Mountain View. It's like 2 stops on the freeway. I get it. I'm a huge democracy and free speech. I'm on board with pretty much most of the progressive agenda. But having said that, I really wish that the people who don't want good, I hope every day that Google does like a China version of a search, because we need it. We don't have any good options. And so I think they should be able to do a localized version and people scream. And
they do have an AI lab in Shanghai.
Paraphrase, Marin. Yeah, no, they do.
But so, I mean, they're in China, but
right. But having their service, I mean, having a Google search, even if they agree to filters, I mean, sharing the data would be the issue. But I'm not on that, but I would be on board. Yeah. Well, they filtered a limited, you put in midget porn and you don't get any results. I'm okay with that. You put in.
That would ruin my day. I
know. It's how are you going to carry on? Well, fortunately, you have an industrial access, as I'm saying. You have secrets, but you can access that site if you need to. But so just for day-to-day stuff, I wish there was Google. But so, I'd already been using WeChat. WeChat launched in English. I mean, I speak a little. I have decent, like taxi and like basically like Didi and restaurant Chinese, but I can't read and write. I mean, I know some characters. I know the basic numbers, but I can't read or write functionally. So WeChat in English was a thing. I was using it in LA in 2012. And and so I was already had good WeChat game going to China, because I had a Chinese partner at the time and a lot of Chinese students I taught producing in LA as well, and some Chinese colleagues. And so but so really embracing WeChat and losing almost everything else was the big shift. And feeling disconnected and cut off, I mean, there were upsides because you felt free of the noise, although I still got notifications. Those still went through. So I still felt.
Well, that's rude.
It is. Having to like turn those off because, most of it you don't care, but then it's like, what's this? I got to check out that and blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't, because the VPNs were super spotty. And again, that's its own story.
No, it is. I got kicked off Twitter more times than I'd like to say last year. And so I migrated over to Instagram, which I actually like right now. But Twitter has much more of like when I want to read stuff online. Yeah. That's much more where I want to be, but it was just so hard to keep recertifying because of quote unquote security reasons. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm in China. Okay. But just stop, please. Just stop.
Yeah, it's become, and I've been struck recently with recent travels and other things.
That's the biggest shift is you weren't using a lot of the West non-Chinese media apps and whatnot, but you were using WeChat a lot.
Yeah, it was a slow migration, and now I've got all the basic Chinese apps that everybody has. I know how to use stuff, and my girlfriend is Chinese, and so she's between my old assistant or my girlfriend who, trying not to bother too much, but like I know, like I use Meituan Waimai for food because I know where all the buttons are. My address is all entered and saved. And, so once in a while when there's an issue, but when I'm back in China, it's either get together with her, or if I'm with a Chinese friend, or if I'm working with Ying, I need like an upgrade. I'll find a trusted Chinese friend and have them help me. Nothing more empowering than as a grown person than having someone help you do.
Oh my gosh,
that a child could do.
The simplest of things, like knowing which button to press at my sushi restaurant when I have to request a number for waiting.
Oh, okay.
Like nice. I'm a child right now. I just keep pressing buttons, and then when they call me, I just point to the one I want and ignore the fact that I pressed the wrong one.
I want this many. And you hold up your fingers.
It's so bad. It's so language issues are definitely humbling.
Well, I joke that my superpower is impressing and then confusing native Mandarin speaker, because I can, the same basic stuff that we say all the time. I mean, I can say all that, and pretty accurately. Somebody will driver will think that they'll say in Chinese. Comedian Jesse Appel, who's great, he has this. I'm paraphrasing a bit of his. He has a thing where he'll check in with somebody, say something really basic, and they'll say, "Oh, it's like your Chinese is so good," and it's like, no, it's very basic. He's actually totally fluent, so that's what's funny. But for me, I can legitimately, no, what? I just said I don't speak Chinese in China. Oh, 我不会说中文. Oh.
Up to a certain point, you were a user of the internet. When did you start creating stuff and putting it online?
Oh, okay. So actually, pretty early on, because even back in Atlanta, when I switched from production work to post-production work, from being on set as a technician to being the editor and like a junior producer, I worked at this production company in Atlanta, and I was an editor for 4 years. And I also did sound when we had it come up for shoots, but I mean, I was transitioning to helping produce into editing. So I would make stuff, and I made little music videos and funny comedy bits and sketches. Early days of, before YouTube, there were all these like video sites, these social
What were those? I don't know that I was on videos much before this.
Blanking about names of a lot of these. But yeah, when YouTube finally became a thing, I mean, my old channel that I don't use, there would be all kinds of old, funny, goofy things that I put on. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, there were things that I uploaded. But one thing was actually, I mean, now, becoming popular and viral, I mean, it means it's millions fairly instantly is what that means. Yeah. But back in the day, I had a thing that kind of went like light viral, which was that it got about 50,000 likes within a matter of a few weeks, which was a big deal. And it was a video, like a one-take performance video. A wizard guitar player friend of mine, Rook Overman, playing a cool piece, and we lit it kind of funky. And it was kind of hypnotic, sort of a trancey thing he did on guitar, a lot of echo and stuff. And it was like, slow pushes in and tilts and pans and pulling it, zooming out. And anyway, because his performance is amazing, not because of my great video, but because his performance is really special, there were some sites who featured it. So back then that meant, oh, hey, look, I got 5,000 or 10,000 likes and plays. Now, if the same thing happens at a meaningful level, I mean, you're talking, tens of millions, but anyway.
5,000 or 10,000.
I don't have anything up there. I don't have anything in the millions.
Well, okay. So you've done behind the scenes stuff and in front of the camera and in front of the mic and stuff. Is there a spot where you feel more comfortable as a creator?
Wherever I am uniquely contributing. Wherever it's something that, maybe somebody else could do it, but it's going to be fundamentally different because of their contribution. I don't have a giant love of being on camera, and this is part of my whole professional, even part of my reckoning of the last year up to now has been about reconciling how much I want to be face forward or not. But,
stop.
That's a big thing.
That was a very powerful, deep sentence that you just said. Can we dig into that?
Sure.
The reckoning. What is that? What happened? What?
Well, okay. So
whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay. I'm happy to share. I just don't want to bore your listeners to tears, or overshare, which I can promise none of those things. I'll let you decide in the edit. This is sort of my own metaphysics, so what I've been working out for myself. And so I don't know how fascinating it is, but I guess the short version of this is because I'm doing this other show, I'm doing when we were talking about the shows that I do, I think that was in our pregame. I don't think I really kind of addressed that briefly. So
should we go over those real quick?
So I could tick through really fast. So I do a podcast that I'm sure you probably linked or whatever called
it'll be in the show notes.
Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom. And it's all about people who've, moved or returned to China to do things that are ambitious, basically. And it was focused on, China side expats or Chinese who have returned, right? For them, but the returning fish, basically, the returning sea turtles who've gone abroad and studied and come back. And love doing that show. Really satisfying. Made a lot of great friends and had some amazing conversations. Love doing that show. That led to doing How China Works, because I wanted to do a show that was a conversation with it was a regular conversation with me, one other person, and not just me and a different guest every week. But How China Works is a show that I created and co-host with Ying Li, who's this amazingly talented cross-cultural communicator. Really big fan of her work. I had her on my show, Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom, and that's what led ultimately to, I wanted to do a show with a Chinese co-host, and that's what led to branding this idea with her. And I love doing that show. And then now, as my work and travels have taken me around more, I mean, China's still like my home, but my film and TV work, my development work's not there, and that's a whole conversation. But essentially, I'm working more in the West, and my my development is in Los Angeles or actually in Paris, which is exciting with this movie that I'm working on.
So cool. Yeah.
So if we get this together, then it'll be there. So I've long been wanting, as much as I love Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom, I've really wanted to create something that I could do that was more portable. And so I came up with this new idea where I took parts. I mean, it's very similar, but I have this new show that I'm launching the first full episode of. I know you're recording, we're been in the can. By the time this comes out, there'll be a lot of these shows up. But I have this show called If I Knew You Better. And the idea is that even if I know the person, I'm asking them the kind of questions you would ask in like late night, the guard's down, you're feeling candid. Ask the kind of questions I'd ask if I knew you better. And the idea is to get into the deeper stuff of life without being too navel gazing about it, but to be able to have those, kind of more meaningful conversations, more reflective conversations with people who have a lot to say. That's the reckoning. So part of it was realizing it was a really hard decision to end Fish as a regular thing, because it means a lot to me, even if it has its loyal audience. There are a few thousand people who are very fortunate and thankful that they like the show and pay attention to the show on a regular basis. And some of them, but not all of them, have come along to How China Works. Some of them, a lot of them be guests on that show, but if they don't need to know that, they already know a lot of that information, so they're not necessarily listening to that show. And I just, from wanting to travel and wanting to talk to people and not wanting to be limited to China. The reckoning was related to me in China and just my professional transformation, the arc of going from, because I didn't move there to produce. I moved there to entertainment business consulting and to switch environments and to learn more, actually to work on my language, which I've done intermittently, but not like I need recently. But the move was about a lot of things, but I didn't plan to write and produce there necessarily. I plan to write there, but then make stuff other places. And that's pretty much how it's working out. I have done some things too. I've done a lot of corporate video, things like that. I directed a thing for Chinese television last year. Right. But the reckoning was, without going deep down each of those individual threads, I mentioned these things kind of in passing to say that coming to terms with where China is in its evolution of what it needs from foreigners. They have learned, the Chinese folks are like, smart people anywhere, have learned and adapted, and they have people to do the things that need to be done. And so if you are established enough, and basically they care about esteem, they want people who really have a giant pedigree for the roles that they have foreigners in. And if you aren't really pedigreed, they don't care. And I have just enough things on the CV that I can do certain things, but in terms of comfortably producing there, it's basically impossible. So the reckoning was my own reckoning with, okay, I moved here with certain expectations. And even with the qualifiers that I had, because I've been working with Chinese clients before I ever had my first trip. I produced a show for Chinese TV in LA before I ever went to China the first time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I did a whole series. I produced and EP'd a whole series with my team, a big celebrity interview show in Los Angeles for Chinese TV.
What was the show?
13 episodes. It's a show, here's my great pronunciation, Jia Pian Yo Ye, which loosely translates, the English name was The Best. And it's about the best writers, directors, actors, producers. And so it's a interview show. It's a CCTV6 thing. And it's a half-hour hosted show, giant rear projection screen with an audience. And they use it to try to set up a featured movie of the week. And they'd wanted to do a Hollywood season forever, but they couldn't bring people over because of time difference in the travel, and even paying people just like, say, SAG scale, which nobody they want's going to take that lower rate. So basically, to do a show with actual Hollywood people, they needed to come to Hollywood. Through a long story, I was the guy that got the gig and did it with my team. IMDb credit is not very accurate and full, but we did 13 episodes of it. So I had that under my belt going to China, which was help, right? Because it is a credit that people who know Chinese media stuff know this reference, and so it's a good reference. But in terms of my own stuff, the reckoning that I mentioned was about what's my place here, and I came here to learn certain things, try to do certain things. And I've done some of those. I've learned a lot more than I ever bargained for. And China is going to be important for the rest of my natural life for the next however many years, and probably for a long time. They'll have a pretty big arc. And I want to be part of that. I want to be part of, whatever's going to be defining the future. I'm to the left of center in terms of anything politically, pretty much, and socially, definitely. So, there's a lot of like biting my tongue and holding my nose. And these skill sets that you develop, no matter what your opinions, if you're have strongly held opinions about anything to do American wise, there's certain ways, but most people who move there don't move there because they want to express some patriotic issue, and they're fairly either they're moving because of their political expertise and how to make something happen, or they're fairly apolitical. So anyway, in terms of reckoning with you, this was about on and off camera stuff, and I got a little bit more meta and weighty for me because this is how my brain works, and all that is kind of preamble to say this. If I am making a difference, if what I'm have to say uniquely influences the conversation, then that's what I'm interested in. And sometimes I'm in front of the camera and sometimes I'm behind the camera.
Right.
But ultimately, I want to make cool things happen. I want to make interesting projects happen. I want to devote my time to doing things. I'm not doing this isn't a hobby. I mean, it's a hobby, and no one's paying me to do this, right? But I've been media professional puts me in a more limited box. I mean, I've got 30 years of film and TV experience, basically. So podcasting for me is an outgrowth of that type of communication and storytelling and performativeness. Can't you tell I'm a storyteller? I say things like that.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack from what you just said. And this is part of why I wanted you on this podcast, is because when I listen to your work, I feel like it grounds me in a way. It's partially your voice, but it's partially your soul, if I can get all creepy. Because you're very...
Unless you want to eat my soul, then it's not creepy.
No. What?
Wear my skin. I don't know. I make a good throw rug.
You have this, if I may get meta about Big Fish Middle Kingdom, you have this really cool balance of like very funny and light and very deep and articulate. And I think that's what keeps me coming back. And that's there whether you're doing a solo show or whether you're doing an interview show. And so that's part of why I was like, oh my gosh, I want to pick his brain about his virtualness.
I really appreciate it. I'm glad to be with you, and I hope it's useful for your listeners. And I do free associate a bit, but that's how we get to the good stuff usually.
That's conversation. That's what happens.
It's just hopefully entertaining. But
I'm
not just trying to be a smart ass. Basically, I'm trying to get at something, but I don't always have the little nugget in 3 words to deliver.
Oh, we don't have to. That's the beauty of long form, is you don't have to get it into 3 words. But that flexibility that you talked about, from what you wanted from China or your experience in China to what you came to in your reckoning, that flexibility in adjusting what you're doing, how you're doing it, and geographically how often you're going to be here while doing it, that's brilliant. Right. And that's something that as expats we have to do, because we don't have a lot of the benefits.
About us. We're the guests.
Yeah.
We're the guests. No matter how long you live there, or you
Exactly.
could be really dug in. You could have a blended family with a local. I mean, you could be.
Doesn't matter. We're not from here.
You
And that's true everywhere.
Responsible, but you're always going to be.
Yeah.
You could be the most inside outsider, but you're still.
And that's true everywhere. That's not distinctly a Chinese thing. I talk to expats from all over, and I have I've been picking people's brains about this crap for years. I just never realized I should hit the record button and capture it.
Nice.
But it's everywhere. If you're not local, you're not local, and you're always going to be an outsider, no matter how much you assimilate. And there's goods and bads that come from that. But that flexibility is absolutely key to sanity.
Yeah, and I realized the thing that that's kind of my process, what I just did, where I sort of had to, just discuss it, right? Because I had that as an exact question. And so the reckoning for me was about, why am I here? Okay, I won't even try to make all the bad jokes about existential crisis, but why am I here in China specifically? I mean, I'm not at the moment. Palo Alto, but why be there, and what am I getting out of it? And the reality is that it was useful and instructive, and now it's time to move on and move back to what I do. In my business, I used to be someone, I've spent a lot of time, a lot of money, lot of blood, sweat, and tears and effort in developing different co-productions related to China. I've developed Chinese-only projects where I was the only Laowai, where I was, the Chinese company with well-connected, like the appropriate kinds of connections and et cetera, like to do things, not people that are wannabes or beginners on stuff. And nothing again, if that's where you are, that's great. I'm not, there's no judgment. I'm just saying I'm dealing with other established professional, and still, even with the best of intentions, like basically I have learned an extraordinary amount, but the learning curve that China still has to do, and that to integrate China versus the Western way film and TV works. Okay. I hope to continue to be part of this conversation, but I'm no longer interested in pushing that rock uphill because I have to, I've got to, I'm trying to raise a pretty big kid here, right? This guy right here. So, I mean, I've got to play to my strengths. And so, there was an adventure aspect of the overly probably romanticized aspect of, I'm going to, I can fit in this unique way. And to a degree, I fit into a way I wasn't needed in certain things. I mean, because I have just enough kind of weird, unique combination of skills and experience and credit and whatnot that I could operate in certain ways. Still, it's not satisfying. It's not satisfying. So the accommodations we constantly make there. Oh, okay. Well, the VPNs are down, but we can do this. Oh, we can't get this thing we really need, but we can do this thing that's kind of similar, kind of close. I'm sick of all that. And so it's been instructive to deal with the limitations. But as much as I'm looking forward to coming back and seeing my girlfriend, seeing my place, and we don't live together. I mean, I have an empty apartment. Hopefully, I prepaid enough power because it's the thing. You got to prepay, right? I prepaid power. I should have power for the year, basically. Okay. I've been paying rent. I've paid for a season of rent. It's been more than a complete season since I've been home, and I paid like full cycle of rent. So for me, the reckoning was about thinking of it in terms of where am I maximizing what I do. And so I went through trying to make it work in a certain way in China, trying to bridge those gaps and having some success doing it, but being really dissatisfied ultimately with the results. So my particular tale is one of continuing to keep like my little lily pad there in Beijing, keep my spot, love my place. I'd be happy to keep it kind of for the duration as my place in Beijing. But in terms of long term, I mean, life is taking me elsewhere. In so many ways, it's like trying to do anything with one arm tied behind your back all the time. Yeah. I know that if I was totally fluent, it'd be the same thing. Yeah. I mean, you have to self-censor and you have to accommodations constantly. There are a lot of human benefits. I mean, my empathy has shot through the roof in a lot of ways because, you have empathy for your fellow person and you have empathy for less fortunate people and living in China and even being a middle-class white guy for China. I mean, you're fortunate to see, I have a lot of friends who are very successful in China, Chinese friends, and to see the extremes, I've traveled a lot through 4th and 5th tier cities and, it's a humbling thing, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, but my life isn't to be a documentarian of them.
Hey everyone, just let me break into Brendan's virtual expat story here for a bit to mention a podcast you might be interested in. What podcast? My podcast. I'm Greg, longtime expat and creator and co-host of the Bangkok podcast. Every week, my good friend Ed and I release a new show that explores one aspect of life in Thailand's capital. From chat-style shows about understanding Thai culture, finding a place to live, and dealing with reverse culture shock, to interview shows with linguists, politicians, celebrities, and Buddhist monks, we help you understand Bangkok like no other show can. Check it out at bangkokpodcast.com. All right, back to Brendan.
Part of what you were talking about is being true to your creative self, and you're willing to compromise to some extent, but you have to only do it to the extent where it still is grounding and productive and a part of reflecting who you are and what you're doing.
Right.
Having said that, you have 3 very different podcasts. out there right now. Who do you see as your audience? Who are you talking to in these different projects?
So with Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom, I think it was a combination, and it is to some extent. I'm still going to put a show up there when I have like the perfect guest. It'll be kind of an irregular thing. I'll use it for my China check-ins that are, more personal or self-indulgent basically than what I do on How China Works, because that's an interview show. So I'll do catch-up episodes with like my friends on How China Works. I know that the audience was heavy on people who already can relate. Either they are China-based expats, or they're Chinese people who deal with expats, or they're expats someplace else, or they're just foreigners who are curious. I mean, they're in another country, but they're curious mostly about China, or they're considering doing an expat thing themselves, or they did and looking back wistfully. Some comment, some version of that, and that's great. And I'm very happy for anyone listening for whatever reason. But a bonus for me has been hearing from people who have no particular China interest and they stumbled in for some other reason, but like the kind of conversations that I would have with the given guest. And because I've had such a huge range of people, and as all of us who do podcasts on a regular basis, you end up talking to a ton of different people if you're lucky. And, you have a combination of luck with scheduling and then work at it. I've had such a range of people that I might have somebody who's just a stone cold expert on something or is known for something. And maybe that's why somebody discovered my show. And the fact that we're talking about a China-related angle on Big Fish was kind of incidental to that person. Right. So that's cool. With How China Works, the first season was done as a crash course in how to be China smart. And so we took that approach. We heavily researched and outlined the first 40 episodes of that. And then now we switched into doing interviews. And because I've been traveling, we've been able to do some 3-way interviews where there's Skype involved, but mostly it's been interviewing people solo, and then she and I would discuss before and or after. I would send in questions that she would, has asked sometimes of the guests, so I'm kind of represented in the interview. But so for that show, it's people who are trying to make sense of China with a real stake in it, and then it's for Chinese people who are trying to go global. That's our angle on that show. For foreigners who want to be China smart, or Chinese who want to go global, so understand better how the outside world looks at your culture, use things from your culture to relate it to here's what's different in the West, and blah, blah, blah. So it's a way to help people have something they can grab onto on either side to understand the other a little better, to try to improve understanding. And so, and then with If I Knew You Better, it is meant to be just my sort of more universal long form chat show where we get into deeper subjects without being pretentious about it. But I mean, where we're going to, talk about the real whys of things and dig in and talk about failures and what you learned and things you've been credit for that you don't feel like you fully earned and why.
When you were creating the most recent one, If I Knew You Better, what were you thinking about who might be listening?
I really hope that it is as broadly interesting as possible. It's my version of like a Mark Maron type of a show, or Tim Ferriss, or, a less than 3 hour Joe Rogan, with probably less talking about on it gym equipment and things. With less plugging of psychedelics. And I have no judgments. I'm a big fan, but he's holding the fort down pretty well.
Yeah.
So it's meant to be more, and with this new show, I mean, I'm just going to say this, and hopefully it doesn't come off in the wrong way, but I'm basically going to be trying to get people with a bigger profile. I want the show to be heard by a wide audience ultimately, because it is meant to be a professional endeavor. And so I'm wanting it to possibly have the biggest audience, and then who's actually listening depends on what someone's interest is in the given guest who I'm talking with. And it is, it's a conversation. So it's my approach here is more Mark Maron, less Larry King, who is a genius. He's one of the references for how to interview people, but he's like the old school. It's not about him at all. And, there's always a bit of me in here just because I've had such a weird kind of a random, like kind of a Forrest Gump in the entertainment business or something with these random situations I've ended up in. So it's not entertainment specific. although it's going to skew a little heavy, especially in these first dozen or so episodes,
Sure.
just because I've been taking advantage of my travels to interview people. My travels are because of entertainment. So there's actors, directors, producers. But I've got like businessman. I've got some other people that have nothing to do with entertainment.
I did about almost a year of podcasting before I started interviewing, and I went into it resistantly. But at first, I thought it would be cheating if I interviewed people I knew, and then I realized that was the silliest thing on earth. Because I mean, part of being an expat and living in different places and meeting really cool people, as I'm sure you have too, is, oh my gosh, wait a minute, I can actually bring them onto the podcast and have a lot of people enjoy their awesomeness, not just me and our,
That's absolutely one of the benefits that I've enjoyed from this too, because whether it was with Big Fish, and I knew some pretty interesting people already back in China, and, stand-up comedians and actors and some China business, like entertainment business people who were old China hands and had a lot to say. And so I knew people who I just knew would be either fun or funny or super interesting and valuable to share their info with people. And so that's completely what drove me to get Big Fish going in the first place. And it's just increased from there. And with how China works, Ying, because she is really very, very friendly and fun, but she's very serious, and is known as this cross-cultural speaker and thinker. And so she's bringing on weightier academic type folks, or really successful business people, or people who have really a pedigree in their field. And so it's gone from like interesting people without always having, they have whatever their credentials are, but so how China works, it's kind of up the game with a certain type of guest. And so with this new show, I'm also wanting to be able to bring on people who, there'll probably be some, some famous names at a certain point. There are definitely people who are known in their industries already, or some of the people I'm recording. Sure. So, I want to hear from people who I want to share that information with other people, from folks who have really accomplished something that's just quite out of the ordinary, ideally.
Yeah.
That's what I'm interested in.
Okay, I've skipped the biggest elephant in the room possible. You've gone from film to podcasting. It sounds like the medium doesn't matter, but just out of curiosity, what are the differences that you've noticed in the switch from the film medium to podcasting medium? And actually, you started with music, so from music to film to podcasting. What are the biggest differences in creating these creatures? So
the biggest differences between these three different mediums are that, of course, with music, it's this complete expression, and it's functioning heavily on an emotional level because it's music, and so that reaches people a different way. With film and TV, and so I haven't switched from film and TV. I added podcasting to the mix, and I'm correcting that because that's part of my own reckoning, was having to be super clear about that, because I've spent this lifetime basically developing film and TV chops and credentials and skills, and so. Podcasting is an outgrowth of being frustrated by the film and TV business in China, because I've said this before on my own shows, and I think I've said it talking with other people on interviews, but I started podcasting for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest personal reasons, so they're all the high-minded things, and, sharing these people I'm meeting, sharing them with the world, and really enjoying those conversations, and keeping myself in practice was related to this. But essentially, it was as a mental health exercise, because it takes forever to do film and TV projects. And with podcasting, though it's quite humble and modest, I'm the whole shop at this point. So I'm the producer and the host, and I edit my own stuff, and I can't see a way not doing that, basically. At the way that I do a show now, I can't see handing it off to somebody. And also, I have the skills, I have the professional abilities to do all that, but it's about the creative choices, right, of what you keep or what you lose and how you do it. Although I love nothing more than an interview that literally I top and tail it. I trim the top, trim the back, and there's no edits in between. That's my favorite thing in the world. And I have a fair amount of those, especially on this new show. I have very few edits so far in the shows I've been recording. So a mental health exercise, because although it's couldn't be more modest, it's a little production that I can do the whole thing. I can do, every week, top to bottom, beginning to end, I could do it. I could deliver. I could ship a thing. And that's been the most personally satisfying aspect of it. But, film and TV is basically the world's most collaborative art form, and requires the most people and the biggest budgets and et cetera, et cetera. So podcasting is the polar opposite of that. And so it doesn't scratch all the same itches, but it has a place in the personal universe of these things.
Right. I actually, in my head, even though I said switched, I did mean where you were going with adding podcasting to the mix. So apologies about that. But
none taken. None taken. Yeah.
I completely and utterly understand the frustration part. Like I said, I started a PhD program and left because, and part of why my language podcast exists is because of my frustration with, not to get too into it, but my frustration with language learning in the academic realm and how isolated and small it is and how it doesn't help the language learner. So I completely and utterly understand that part of podcasting. You mentioned being co-located. How the heck do you juggle all of these things with being in two places?
Well, not very well,
or
frankly.
3 or 4 places. Yeah.
Not as well as I would like. The tricky part, my favorite, sometimes people, when you get a great new app that you love and you want, do you have this or have you tried that? I don't need to advertise for them, but on it's a iOS app. I think they have an Android version. It's my app called Time Scroller. It's just it's my clock for planning meetings and this and that. And you can add, places. So that's what I use all the time. So how do I deal with it? I write everything down. Like I've developed a calendar system. The tricky part is, there's the coordinating of the timing, because too late is not good because I'm usually zonked, and too early is not good because I'm not awake. Depending on where I am, that's the tricky part in terms of doing podcasts. In terms of my life, that's what I've been dealing with. For me, the great part is that you can be connected no matter where you are. And of course, the downside is that you have to assert yourself, even if just to yourself, about these are my boundaries and this is how I'm going to deal with certain things. In terms of what are this concept of work hours. I have a concept of office hours, and you're laughing because you live in China, and the boundaries are
very fluid.
Are not so much. Yes, fluid's a good word. And what color is that liquid, and is it in my face? That's the reality of the fluidity. Of the work hours. It's slightly vulgar, but hopefully it was generic enough that it can still be funny and make the point without grossing too many people out. But that's the result. My Chinese friends, it's like, oh yeah, so hey, random thing, which I hear these stories, and here's my version of it in English. Okay, because we don't know what we're doing and we don't know how to plan, and we have no respect for your life, we're all going to be working here until we're done, and that might just be 12 straight days, and it might be 18-hour days. Yay, fight. That's my version of that. That's a bunch of horse shit, in my opinion. There you go. That's what I think about that. That's what I think about 996. That's the work culture of the tech environment. It's starting to finally get some pushback. It's like, oh, you work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. Much more often, you go in and you're there super late, and then sometimes you're quite often there on the 7th day. And it's a big conversation, and people do like really weighty podcasts, and people are writing their dissertation right now about these are the sacrifices China must make as it seeks to catch up with the world and accelerate and dominate. Okay, that's great. If that's your trip, you do you. You do you. You do you. All right. But meanwhile, so that's and I'm having a little fun saying all this. I'm not really that full of myself. People who know me, I got a giant smile on my face. You can even see what just laptop glow. I don't mean any of this in a self-important, pretentious way. No. It's easy enough to do that, which is part of the reckoning of yourself. But if you're lucky to be a privileged type expat as opposed to a refugee, which is something that's a topic that comes up on some of our friends' shows a lot.
Yeah.
So that's part of my come to Jesus meeting for myself was, what am I here to do? Why am I doing it? What's important? What do I care about? What do I not care about? Like what are my values? That's what everybody's trying to figure out these days.
Yeah.
And the reality is that, when I come back to China, part of what I say, I've had my moments where it's been more rude and I don't want to be that kind of guy. To me, it's funny to be so blatant sometimes, when there's so much effort to be very, mannered and cool. But I am not available 24 hours a day.
Good.
Regardless, I'm not available 24 hours a day. I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm not like a transplant surgeon on standby, ready to hop on the helicopter and put in a kidney on somebody who needs to be available. I make film and TV, and I talk in a mic. For me, having some control of that is absolutely crucial. And I'm fortunate that I basically work for myself so I can do that. But I end up on projects where I'm partnered with people or hired by people to do things. And then, of course, you have to respect deliverables and this and that. But I don't do China work style anymore.
Yeah.
I don't do it. it. Not interested. I don't have to. So I've taken my ball and I've been going back to LA. To spend the better part of a month in Paris developing a project, which is great. Hopefully it happens. But so when I'm back in China, in a weird way, it's waiting for the next big development on a project to take me back out of China. And meanwhile, I'll be doing my podcasts in my own time. But I have my alerts, like on my phone, it's 10 to 10 are the hours that I get messages from the world. I don't get alerts for that other time. I don't get them. I can find them if I go to the special screen, and there's ways. If there's something that's crucial, there are ways people can dial the number and the phone will ring at any 24 hours a day, because almost nobody has my number. And if they do, then they better know not to call it at 3 a.m. Just, hey, what are you doing? Plotting ways to kill you. How about you? What are you up to?
Oh, man. So it sounds like over the time that you've been in China that there's been not just an offline kind of reevaluating of what you're doing and when you'll do it, but also an online evaluating with your screen time.
Completely.
Yeah. So there's a really beautiful symmetry of what you've said about those two, your offline and your online life, and the boundaries and introspection that you've done with those. Do you think that would have happened had you not moved overseas?
I've thought about, I had too much kind of to do when you're busy, you don't have time to think about it. When you're not busy, you have too much time to think about this kind of stuff. And so I've had both plenty. Yes, that the opportunity to be reflective has definitely come up, because it's been a lot of, film and TV in general is a hurry up and wait business.
Right.
Shoot through that way until you are needed to do the thing you do, you're sitting around. And then when you're needed, you got to be totally dialed in. You go in there like an assassin and you do your thing and you get out and the next person does their thing. So with China, it's been a lot of that reckoning of time management. We were talking earlier, and I don't know if this will connect as directly as it does in my brain, but I think the thing that the button I wanted to put on something that came up earlier relates to what you just said, which is because of my, we've done a few public events, and there's a path, there's an alternate universe in which I'm in front of a room with a screen and a clicker in my hand and going, hi, people from so-and-so company. Let me tell you about working in China. Click, silent click. Here's the next slide. And blah, 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 blah. I could easily be one of those people who's up there, chatting about something with PowerPoint, and tons of my friends do this. This is not a generic put down. I'm simply saying, for me, there's an alternate universe. It's probably right next door to the one that I'm living in, where I'm doing that. And I even had to reconcile, do I want to be a face forward? Let me have to care about how my skin look, let me have to manage how I look and go out in front of people and do this thing where that's important, right? And to be like someone's accessible guide to those things. And so, I love to teach. I actually don't, when I'm not doing this, I'm not the chatty guy at the party. I'm not that talkative. I'm actually extremely introverted, and I play an introvert when we flip on the mics and start doing this stuff. Or if I have to, in the entertainment business for meetings. But otherwise, I'm pretty quiet, actually. So that was part of it. And again, I love China. I love so much Chinese culture. I don't, against certain of the practices that are kind of dehumanizing or soul crushing, such as the work hours and certain things. I'm not about that, as you would say. But other things, I mean, I certainly respect certain things from the culture and the deep history. And so I enjoy being able to be as local as I can.
Yeah.
And then I just have to define where my boundaries are about that stuff and what do I want to do. And so there's kind of a joke. One of my nicknames in a few circles of my friends is jokingly Hollywood Panda. And I mean, I've got friends who are 20, 30-year Hollywood people dealing with China, Chinese friends who've been in Hollywood for 20, 30 years. Yeah. They're people far more experienced than me, top to bottom, on both cultures. But I am one of these people that has enough experience, enough credit that I'm kind of lumped in with some of these folks who all I consider basically mostly mentors, or I look to that way.
And the skill to articulate it in the way that you do, I think.
Right. And so that's honestly a thing that I sort of had to face is like, okay, well, there is a career that's adjacent because the reasons I moved, it goes down a big rabbit hole, but I could say without going down that giant rabbit hole, the main reasons I moved were, I mean, it was kind of the adventure that I was looking for. That's not one of the reasons. That was the context. There were two things that were happening currently in the film versus TV is very, very different, especially in China. It's a little more similar in the West now. But there was this promise, stated promises about the capital markets opening up in China. And then there was, I'm paraphrasing how I said this to a friend of mine, so in terms of the economics of how the film business works there, there was this expectation across all industries that the financial markets were going to open up. And that was going to make cross-border business, easier. And then the other thing that was developing related to my business, no one thought it was going to be like Paris during the Enlightenment, but there was a feeling that certain kinds of liberalization is the wrong word, and that's a 4-letter word in China. But there was a feeling that there would be a little bit more relaxing. Okay, we're going to slowly open up the valve a little bit and let a little more of the outside world into this walled garden. Yeah. And then starting in 2018, both things went hard the other way. Hard the other way, which living there and being engaged in the stuff you're engaged in. So with Hollywood, I mean, there are all these China Hollywood deals, and that's both place specific and also just metaphorically. It could be China and Britain or whatever. But there are so many of these deals, and there are cultural reasons why many of them, I would say the majority of them, probably were never real deals in the first place. It's like but even in the places where there was mutual understanding, mutual good faith, mutual intent, so many of these deals ultimately fell apart anyway because of the financial restrictions.
Right.
Trying not to, trying to avoid money laundering and capital flight, blah, blah, blah. Right. But that killed the little window, okay, of my intention. That was the main death bell for that. Yeah. And then the other thing was just the fact that content-wise, we're always going to have two industries because language and because culture. It's almost impossible to do a successful co-production. The handful that exists, kids and family related stuff or travel docu stuff. Right. Stuff that's like G or P or like PG, not even PG-13. Like stuff like that. Yeah. And animation because you can revoice characters, right? Yeah. So those are your opportunities, but this is basically, stuff that I basically don't do. I mean, I've done some docu stuff and I love documentaries. Yeah. There's no money in it. Tell you a secret. There's no money in documentaries. I mean, there are like 3 people who make a living making documentaries and Michael Moore and Ken Burns are 2 of them. Right. So it's a bit of an exaggeration to make the point.
This conversation is the perfect example of how different our virtual lives are and our geographic lives and how different the conversations can go depending on what people do in those 2 places. So with that in mind, knowing that the people that come on here are expats or were expats in one or more places and that we're dissecting their virtual or online brain, what questions are missing? What should I ask future guests on the show?
I think that there's something to be considered here because I've done it in passing, scratching my beard moments. There's probably a few PhD dissertations to be written on this topic or some master's thesis or whatever. and there have been things about how does your online persona influence your offline reality, and what's the difference? Is it, being unified is a thing. I think it's interesting how have your core values, as you identify them, how have those core values changed during your time living abroad, and why? And the online specific question is, how does the way you must represent yourself to be socially acceptable in your new home, how has that influenced who you really are fundamentally? Because our online persona is ultimately it's like our agent, the shiny, prettier, happier, slimmer version of all of us, right?
How close is that to your real self? Is that the essence?
Yeah. In all in something approaching seriousness for me, because I actually am very serious. That's why I throw in all the humor to diffuse and try to examine some weighty, weird stuff without it being too heavy or coming off too self-important. I mean, Carlin is more of a role model for me than probably any speaker.
You actually created 2 of them, so which one do you want to answer? How
That's
have
my
your
special skill? Answer one question by creating 2 more. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, now they're on the list of questions that will possibly be asked.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Ask all of them, right? So, which one do you want to answer? How have your core values changed living abroad, or how does the way you represent yourself online show us your real self? Which one do you want? I want you to answer the second one, but it's ultimately your
I'll answer the second one. So how does my online representation and my actual self, how have I reconciled these things is kind of the bad way to restate my own question. I can answer this by relating another friend's story. My friend Carl King, who does the music on my podcasts, spectacular filmmaker, writer, director, producer, editor, composer, had been a big cult musician. He's actually famous in certain progressive music circles under a couple of his different pseudonyms that he had. And so there was a point where he went through a bit of and he talks about this himself, and I'm paraphrasing to summarize this. He basically went through a bit of a breakdown. He had this existential crisis of who the hell am I? Yeah. Because all these personas, and his different personas are known, and one of them was like real they were always kind of edgy people, and he's really sweet and kind. But this is how he agitated and how he stirred the pot and how he challenged himself by challenging other people. And sometimes it was probably slightly on the trollish, dickish side of things, not being horrible. Not like some political person with an axe to grind, but just artistically, that band sucks and here's why. And then very, very, intelligently tearing something apart. And it's like, he grew up, but he had this crisis to integrate his personalities. And so all his pseudonyms, so he ended up coming back into his own self and just being Carl King. And what's funny, his website is carlkingdom.com. And and in a way, because it's perfect. It's his kingdom of all his stuff, but he's just himself. And so for me, I've always just been myself, but the necessity of, there are a lot of things, a lot of aspects to this. I mean, I kind of let it all hang out to a degree. I mean, I have some boundaries and sense of propriety when I need to. And so I'm always evaluating, like, how much can we kind of have fun versus how straight does it need to be? But I err toward the side of let me be candid. And again, if we were live on CNN, I'd be totally focused and giving you the bullet point type answers. And this is a different format, right?
Yeah.
But exactly. And that's part of why I like you and I, this is the format that I love. When we flip the roles, it's the same thing, except I'm asking more questions and you're doing more talking. And for me, integrating those personalities, I didn't have distinct splits in my brain, but I was aware of, okay, so here's, professional entertainment professional is kind of a broad category, but especially as I veered toward, maybe doing some sort of corporate consulting, public speaking, and the idea of promoting myself as a speaker is something I've looked at 3-4 times in my life. It's come up, and it's, and there are these great training programs that teach you how to do this stuff. And I've been involved in one of those years ago in a different role, kind of like junior facilitator in these things. In like an incubator before you called them incubators. And figuring out that I just want to be me, right? I just, for better or worse, I'm just going to be myself. And so there's the China friendly version, which is simply, I don't post too much polemics sort of stuff anyway, because nobody really cares. I mean, no one's opinion's been changed by what someone screamed at them on the internet. So I'm not that guy. But trying to navigate what I actually care about and what I'm thinking about and what I want to share. And then there's the promotional aspect, which I always feel like a dirty whore, and you have to figure out how do you promote something and put something out there in a way that's necessary and gets the point across, but that people don't just go, dude, shut up. We don't care. You don't want to turn people off. Finding the balance is that's the never ending challenge of all this. Finding the balance between how you are online. It's not that much different from having to navigate socially the reality of just existing in the world. And, Western societies have been going through this with Me Too movement and things like that. And, working in Hollywood as a metaphorical place, even if it's not my physical place, something I'm keenly aware of, because we tend to have people who are really pushing the envelope on, both in terms of the social justice side, and you have people on the free speech side, who are often at opposites, right? And are the people who are actually fighting, sometimes through different proxies. So, yeah, it's been a learning experience for me, and it's one I'm still dealing with, trying to be as straightforward as I can be, and be, feel like I'm being true to myself, but keeping my visa intact. That's the goal.
I totally get that. And I think that's one of the appeals of your projects, is that it's never unclear how real is Brendan being. I think it's pretty clear for the listeners that you're you, that decision is coming across, Good. At least to these earbuds. So thank you so much, Brendan, for being on here. I'm sure our listeners will have a lot of stuff to feedback on. How and where should they find you online?
Well, thanks for having me. It's really been a lot of fun to chat with you and to kind of ramble on here a bit in some places. I hope that listeners enjoyed it. And if you want to find out more about me, but I'm centralizing everything on my main website. You can go to crazyinagoodway.com. You can track on my podcast. HowChinaWorksPodcast.com is its own site, but my projects, and then also I'm linking through, I've been streamlining this site. I've been throwing pages away like crazy. But yeah, so reach me there. There are contact options, contact page, and you can search me on the socials. I'm kind of easy to find.
And really fun to follow on Instagram.
Yeah. The Instagram is fun. And I've noticed that my friends under 30, that seems to be the main way that they friended up, and even chat, they use the chat on Instagram as their main chat these days, it seems like.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Hey, Steph here again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Virtual Expats Podcast. And thank you to Brendan Davis for coming on. With all of his projects, I know how precious his time is. And I'm really, really grateful that he was able to have the long chat that we had for this episode. And for him being just so genuine, so funny, and such a good storyteller. So thank you very much, Brendan. We are definitely going to follow you online at crazyinagoodway.com, because he is, and we like it that way. Thank you also goes out to Damon Castillo, who graciously allows us to use his music from the Mess of Me album. And I realize I've just been playing snippets behind us talking so far in the Virtual Expats podcast. So after a brief surprise here, I'm going to play the full song. It's also called Mess of Me. It's the title track of that album with lyrics, and Damon's voice is amazing. So you're going to love this. So please do listen up for this one. You might want to get up and start moving around too, because it's a pretty jazzy number. You can find Damon's information at damoncastillo.com. It's DamonCastillo.com. If you are lucky enough to live in coastal California, you can find him all over the place. He does a lot of concerts in Central Coast, California, like around San Luis Obispo area where he is based, but he also goes up and down the coast as well. So do get on his tour calendar there. You will want to see him and his band live. They are amazing. For more Virtual Expat podcast episodes, feel free to visit us at virtualexpats.podbean.com, or literally just search for us as Virtual Expats in your podcast app. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions, comments, or to volunteer to be a guest on the podcast. Again, it's STEPHFUCCIO everywhere. Thank you so much, and more soon. Hello?
Okay. Yeah. Does it sound good on your end?
Yeah, you sound great.
Yeah, I mean, you sound great. it's
right now?
It's right the second. Yeah.
Oh.
picking up garbage every day since I've been here with you. Picking up knowledge, hauling trash to the yard, taking class at my college. Very deep garbage heap, I can't sleep. You've made a mess of me. 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 I won't take another dirty job. Thought you were the kind of girl to take your tea out in the garden, spill your cup. Now I'm stuck cleaning up, begging your pardon. Your debris clear to me. Now my heart is starting to harden. Every drink makes me think of the stink. You've made a mess of me. 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 I won't take another dirty job. You've made a mess of me. You've made a mess of me. Oh, no. You've made a mess of me. Oh, no. You shouldn't. You've made a mess of me. I won't take another one of yours. You've made a mess of me. Oh. You've made a mess of me. Oh, no. I won't. You've made a mess of me. You've made a mess of me. I won't take another dirty job.
Membership fees apply after free trial. Cancel anytime.
You know what's wrong with health and fitness? You weaponize it against yourself. Why didn't you go to the gym today? You're so lazy. Why did you eat that? You have no self-control. Stop it. At Beachbody, we think training and caring for your body in a way that works best for you should be about loving yourself. Let us help you without all the judgment. Here's how. Go to beachbody.com to claim your free membership and start feeling great.